Thank you, Amit. I'm going to just invite my panelists on the stage. Nalini, Raju, Anand, are you here? Great. Wherever you want. So thanks. Firstly, it's great to see everyone here. It's a great weather. I heard it's stormy in New York, so maybe we missed the rains here. It's so great to see some familiar faces, and also great to see many more who will become friends soon. My name is Anant. I'm from the Bridgespan Group. Preeta and I both work in the Mumbai office of Bridgespan, and it's been a privilege working with Ashish and Sanjay and team on really this research. I think the sole purpose of the research is what are the barriers, what are the opportunities for the Indian diaspora to really play at its full potential. This can be a massive force for good. We heard some of the findings, we heard some of the actions which are already being taken. I mean, there is nothing more gratifying to a consultant to see stuff actually happening. So thank you for getting that off the ground. I'm going to dial back a little bit to work with my panelists on some of the reasons why it's hard to do bold giving and how we can get over that and what are some of the inspiring stories. I think we all will hear about each other as we go through this, but I'm going to start first by one question, and I'm going to just, Nalini, request you to get us started, which is, you heard about some of the opportunities, you heard about some of the challenges. There is wealth, the wealth will increase. However, the wealth is not translating to giving. I'm being blunt here because the potential is so immense. So this is not to say great work isn't happening, but it is undisputable that much more can happen. So as you think about transformative giving, what stands out to you as maybe an example where you were absolutely blown away around how transformative giving can be? Talk a little bit about how that happened and your experience there.
Thank you, Anand. Really wonderful to see that description of the study and the results. It's very, for me, also great to see action. Talking is one thing, but doing something about it is really inspiring. So thank you to the Given in Diaspora group for, taking it on as an action item, or 2 or 3 action items. Transformative giving, I think there are a number of spots we can look at. Others here may comment more on how how a gift can transform the trajectory of a nonprofit, for example, and help it make greater impact. But I want to talk about universities and endowed giving and how we can take inspiration from some of that. So I know that Indian Americans give a lot to the schools and universities and colleges they went to. So one of the ones among the people I know is Raj Gupta. So Raj, corporate CEO, founded Ujjwala Foundation, and by the way, he gave us, apparently Arogya World, the nonprofit I founded, was the first recipient or one of the first recipients of his newly formed Ujjwala Foundation. I remember he came to my house and we had I don't think this is working. We had a great dialogue, made a presentation, and he said, yep, I'm going to give you this much. And that's it. He made a decision on the spot, and he gave us. And for us, at that time, it was an important gift. But what he's doing in the university, he has started with a number of universities, different things. But Johns Hopkins, he has started an institute, an India institute, focused on research in health. And he is, it's transformative, I think, because he is inspiring a whole bunch of public health leaders and researchers focused on India, right? So this is going to be important for India, for the world, and for the global health space. But not all transformative giving has to be money. I want to give the example of my nonprofit. My colleague, a board member, Pamela Yee, has given so much of her life. 13 years we've been in existence. All 13 years, pro bono, she has been working. So her gift of, and she takes care of the back office and spares me to take care of the front office. So it's been a really great partnership. But Pamela's contribution to Arogya World has been transformative. If she didn't do those audits and all those financial matters, and she does it without, any hesitation, without expectation, so it's really transformative. So for me, I admire that in someone who's willing to give so much of her life to, make Arogya World grow. I also take inspiration from the Asian American Fund. In something like 3 weeks a few years ago, they raised $1 billion+. Hey, if the Asian Americans can do that, Indian Americans can as well. And I really look forward to the day when there might be $1 billion fund from Indian Americans.
All right, thank you, Anant, and good morning, everyone. It's such a delight to be here with you all. With respect to the question about transformational giving, I think it all starts with, I think Amit, in one of his slides, he talked about kind of having the trust. For a lot of givers, they don't know where the money is going. Is that actually having a long-term effect? Is that going to be sustainable, or is it, all of that, right? So just, I can share a little bit kind of from my own personal experience. I've been a big beneficiary and, inspired by people like Kanwal Rekhi and Deshpande, both in my own journey as a tech entrepreneur, but also in philanthropy that I've been involved with actively with respect to India over the last 10 years. So fundamentally, to me, I always had this belief that, for India to become an economic superpower, we have to create more economic opportunities beyond the metros, in the districts of India. If the districts of India can become the engines of economic growth, I think that's really the pathway for India to become an economic superpower. So I looked at different ideas, and here personally I was very actively involved with the initiative called Sevathon. Some of you may know about it. Wonderful initiative that brings together different nonprofits. And eventually I sort of decided to put my time and resources into what's called the Kakatiya Sandbox. This is modeled after the work that Deshpande has been doing in Hubli for the last 15 years. So I started this initiative in Nizamabad, which is in North Telangana, shares a border with Maharashtra, Nanded, and Bidar in Karnataka. So Nizamabad in many ways is a wonderful microcosm of India. And so I started that with another tech entrepreneur, a young tech entrepreneur by name Fanindra Sama, who built a company called Redbus in India. So at a high level, there are kind of three main constructs to it. And then I'll give you an example of some transformational impact at the end of that, to answer your question, Amit. One, it's a bottom-up form of socio-economic development, meaning unless the local people are an active part of the solution, these changes are not sustainable. It can be somebody sitting in Bangalore or Hyderabad, let alone Silicon Valley. We can all play a role, catalyze that, help that, but at the end of the day, the people in the local communities have to own that. So a lot of my time goes into nurturing the young talent in these districts, in the area where we operate. Second is taking an entrepreneurial mindset to addressing social challenges. As Desh likes to describe, if you can bring the compassion of the nonprofit world with the execution excellence of the for-profit world, right, then you can get outstanding results. And third is scale, meaning in a country of 1 billion people, there are a lot of wonderful work being done in some villages here and there, but unless you touch a large population, you can't make a meaningful difference. So in a sandbox, typically we started off with about 10 million population. This Nizamabad, Karimnagar, and Medak. The names may not mean anything to you, but these are 3 districts in northern Telangana. And but today that has expanded to roughly about our impact region is about roughly 1% of India's population, about 14 million. Over a period of time, the neighboring districts, including Nanded in Maharashtra, have sort of, wanted to basically take some of our programs and take that forward, right? So those are kind of three high-level sort of guidelines, if you will. And I spend a lot of time. In fact, I just came back from India last week. I go there at least once every 3 months, sometimes like about 6 trips in a year. And most of my time is actually in the districts. I go to Hyderabad primarily for access to airport, but otherwise, it's out in the villages or district. And I think that makes a huge difference. And it's not like I'm doing any favor to anybody. Honestly, I learn a lot. It's so energizing personally for me when I see the impact. So one example I can give you is something called a farm pond. 70% of rural India still depends on agriculture. And reliable access to water is the single biggest determinant for agri-productivity. So the farm pond, the idea is pretty simple. It's about a 50 feet by 50 feet by 12 feet deep, or 100 by 100 by 12, depending on the size of the farm. Pond that is built within the, a farmer's own land, and takes roughly about 5% of their land. So this costed anywhere from 60,000 rupees to 1 lakh. That's roughly, let's just say about $1,000, right? Roughly, depending on the size of the pond. So initially, we did about 1,000 of those ponds, completely free philanthropic dollars. And within 1 year, the farmers were able to more than double their income. That entire thing it's amazing what difference that can make. Then next, we did about 7,000 or 8,000 ponds, where the farmer put in about half the money, and we put in the remaining half. Because we said, hey, if this is viable like this, why can't the farmers put in something, right? Because I think every time that's the thing about taking an entrepreneurial mindset to addressing social challenges. If they can really double their income in 1 year, why not? So they did that. And then we said, hey, now we want to do 100,000 of those farm ponds. Because, again, large country, 10,000 ponds is good, but still, very small. But to do 100,000, they'll cost us anywhere from 600 crores to 1,000 crores. That's like about $100 million, plus or minus, right? And it's a pretty large amount of money, even for the biggest of the foundations. But even if they had the money, heck, that's not what you want to do. You really, now that you have demonstrated the economic viability, why not go to the banks? There are banks like SBI, NABARD, HSBC. So they actually came forward, and 80% of that money is coming as loans directly from the banks to the farmers. Now, we facilitate a lot of it, and the farmers put in the other 20%. And now we still invest in technology. When you have scale, you can do technology. So we hired a wonderful guy. In fact, Shubha, I think I saw him here. He was part of the Google Earth team here in Mountain View. And so he joined us as the CTO. So now we're able to apply technology to solving this problem. So again, I just wanted to give that as an example of a transformational impact that you can have. So this is very real, and this is all happening well beyond the metros. And, I can go more into that, but it's just fantastic when you see those sort of things happening on the ground. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you, Raju and Nalini. Just before Anand, you come in, I think a couple of things jumped out, right? Even as you were saying, and I've heard them from, I think the one thing which just jumped out was, let's think in terms of percentage of Indian population. You said 1%. 1% means a lot. And moment that denominator effect, we call it the denominator effect. Moment we remember India has, 1.4 billion people. I think scale, technology, working with the government, etc. kick in. So firstly, thank you for highlighting. I think you spoke on something, Nalini, which is so powerful, which is unrestricted funding. End of the day, if you were to bet on a startup here in the Valley, I'm sure it happens, but how would you feel if the investor comes and asks you about, like, okay, where did you spend the money, and like, did you take a cab or did you take a RIC? That does not make sense. You're taking a bet on the nonprofit. And in fact, one of the things which I've heard both funders and nonprofits come back, which is transformative, is something rather simple. Take a bet, do all the diligence around taking the bet, but after that, let the bet play out. Don't micromanage. With these two, Anand, I'll come to you. Like, as you think of transformation, what is transformative? And give an example from your personal story.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And that was truly inspiring from both of you, Raju. And so it was, my example of transformational giving, it's sort of related to what Raju was saying. It's sort of going to the districts in India, in particular the underserved districts. And this is a project, this is not unlike Raju. I've not been on the ground doing these things. We've been supporting a wonderful nonprofit called India Literacy Project, ILP. I can see Padmaja here from ILP, doing some amazing work. And the particular project that I want to pick is a project that they're doing in Odisha. In particular, in the two districts in Orissa, one is Kendujar and the other is Denkanal. These are two districts that have a massively tribal population, and these are areas where literacy is like female literacy is like 40%, right? So that kind of area, so what ILP and what we've done is we've supported ILP over many years as they've gone to these areas, and they have managed to create public-private partnerships to bring schools to these areas, to get the government services to these areas, and serve there's about 300. We picked about 300 villages, and we probably educated about 30,000 kids over the past 5 years or so in these villages. And the amazing work that they've done is that they've taken areas where the primary school attendance was 8%, okay, and today it's 80%, right? So, and in some areas, in many villages, it's gone to 100%, right? So I think that's truly transformational for the lives of those people in those hundreds of villages. And so it's sort of, I picked this project as transformational because it sort of, satisfies several criteria that we look for when we think of funding projects. One is that it should be sort of addressing a gap area that is not already being well served by CSR funds, for example, in India, or by the government, and leverage those funds, obviously, but not for example, if you think of education in India, primary school education in India, and if you think about the cities or the districts in Tamil Nadu, where I'm from, right, those areas are actually very well served by CSR dollars already. So there's no point in putting more money into primary education in Tamil Nadu because there's enough money going in there already. So as a Silicon Valley investor, I want to address gaps, right? I want to find areas like Orissa where there are underserved tribal populations where, I would be scared to go because these are Naxalite-infested areas, and sort of pick those areas and sort of serve them. That's one. The second is the scale of the impact that's made, and sort of being able to quantify it, going from 8% to 80% in school attendance. And the third is sustainability, right? So when we sort of think about these investments, I spent my career in Silicon Valley, and it's sort of there's no way I cannot bring a Silicon Valley VC hat to this, right? So what I look for is, what we are giving is the seed capital or a risk capital for a project, right? And it's sort of addressing a gap. What I want to see over a quantifiable period of time, and that quantifiable period of time might vary from project to project, I want to see a plan for how this project becomes sustainable without needing foreign capital. See, at the end of the day, there is enough capital in India, right? The goal should be that a project becomes sustainable using indigenous capital, either government or CSR, over a period of time, over a quantifiable period of time, and you have to track that, just as I would track on the board of directors, track a company, right? So that's the way I do it. ILP has done this in the case of this project. Now we are sort of sunsetting this project. Because all these villages, in most of these villages, the government has taken over and built the schools and are running it, or the villages themselves, they've handed it over to the community, and the community is running these schools. So it sort of satisfies all these criteria, and that's why I picked this project as a transformational project.
Thanks, Anand. And this last one, I don't. Thank you. Anand speaks eloquently about sustainability, and this is one of the topics which we are hearing again and again. Also because, end of the day, like you said, philanthropy as a percentage of the total pie is sometimes as little as 1%. 1%, but that 1% can be truly risk-taking, truly catalytic, truly early stage. The remaining 99% can come in for scale capital, but that remaining 99% usually doesn't have the ability to come in for risk capital. So thank you for sharing that. We heard a few definitions of what's transformation and examples. Let's unpeel a little bit on why this happens so little and why this happens so infrequently. Clearly, there are great examples where it happens. We heard 3 examples right now. There are, I'm sure, 30 more examples in the room. I'm going to try to get a little bit into the barriers for some of these not happening more often. I'm going to start with you, Anand, and really focus a little bit on one of the barriers which is emerging on the research, which is time. Clearly, Raju, you spoke about it. Like all 3 of you have, in different stages of your life, different approaches. But the one thing which is clear to me is you have really invested your time. You have invested mind space. Philanthropy, especially transformational philanthropy, is hard to do if one is not engaging mentally. So, Anand, could you speak a little bit about, as new wealth comes in and wealth comes in much earlier than what it came before, what is the barrier of time going to play out as, and what are ways by which this could actually be solved for?
Look, I can speak only from personal experience on this, right? So I was fortunate enough that, I was, a typical Silicon Valley story. I had my first success as a company when I was, very young, right? So, and at that time, clearly, giving was, I had no idea what to do, right? I mean, clearly I had this idea that I wanted to give, but I had no idea what to do. And I think a lot of potentially people in Silicon Valley go through this, especially founders and so on. I think that's a journey that a lot of people can relate with. And what people end up doing, people like me, is that we decide we want to give a bunch of money, but we don't know where it's going to go. So we end up taking a bunch of our stock and putting in a donor advised fund or something of that nature, right? Like a DAF, right? So that's what a lot of us do. And then over time, we need to sort of distribute the funds in that DAF to worthy causes, and that's where I think something like Give can come in and help identify those those causes to which funds can go, because there are people with lots of money in their DAFs. That need to go to great causes, and not all of them have the time to do due diligence and research. In the case of ILP, I was fortunate enough to meet these wonderful people even when I was a student, and so I had a deep relationship with them. So, but that doesn't always happen. So the primary places by which we find causes to give are through personal referrals. I mean, it's no different from Silicon Valley in some sense, right? Most VCs invest in companies that are referred to them through their network, right? So, because then there's a trust factor that comes with it, right? So, and so most of the startups, in most of the nonprofits that we end up supporting come to us through our network of friends who we trust, who support those same causes, and then we end up supporting those causes. So there's definitely a network effect that goes on there. And if there is a way to sort of either both sort of kickstart that network effect by introducing new causes into the network, but also sort of use that to advantage. At some level, it doesn't matter to what extent people trust, give, and so on. I'm still going to invest, going to give to a cause that comes to me through my network. So at some level, Give needs to sort of co-opt this mechanism in some way and co-opt the network of donors and sort of go, find a way to approach people through trusted networks. I think that's I think the long-term way to do this.
Oh, great, and I'm just going to follow on with one. Like, when did this happen? Like, because I ask because sometimes one falls into the thinking or trap of, let me get done with my chapter 1 of my life, and I'll then start chapter 2. Earlier, that used to happen at roughly 65 years of age. When did it happen for you? When did you start actually thinking, doing the diligence, getting into this for you?
Look, as I said, I set aside the funds fairly early, right? Or some of them maybe continue doing that on an ongoing basis. But the actual giving, in my case, probably started. I think the most important factor there was getting married. So once I once I got married, my wife is. she's very socially conscious, and she said, look, we better start giving, right? So, so that clearly helped me, helped push me a lot.
We just found the trigger.
Right, exactly. Find people who are getting married and, go.
No, thanks. And some of this is interesting because this can be it can start happening much earlier than before. Raju, I'm going to come to the second potential barrier. Not to say it cannot be bridged, which is, solving the problem or moving away from a charity mindset to a cause mindset. What I mean by that is, and again, obviously galas are great, but there could be a gala too many. Whereas one could actually argue that, look, many of these issues are going to be 10 years in their duration in terms of the effort needed, needs to be massive scale. And the barrier then is, how do we move away from a charity mindset where the focus is on just contributing to actually saying, I'll do what it takes to solve the problem, or at least moving the needle to some extent. Raju, you have obviously embodied that quite a bit, and many others. Talk about the barrier a little bit, and then talk about how to get beyond the barrier.
Sure. I love the idea of your Roots program. That just looking at the brochure. I think that'll be very useful for people to sort of go experience that firsthand, right? So I think one of the big things, especially with, this probably applies to any nonprofit, but more so for the ones that are focused on rural India, kind of beyond the metros, is really the capacity, the local capacity to execute. And not just for 6 months, six years, but for the next 20 years or 50 years, right? In some ways, it's not that different from startup investment, like Anand was talking about. It's, ideas are dime a dozen. There are plenty of ideas out there, but oftentimes it comes down to which team can execute. That's what, you're really betting on the people, at least with early stage investing that I'm more familiar with. And so I think the same thing happens here. So how do you build a organization, a culture that allows you to attract, nurture great talent? For instance, the guy who runs our, Kakatiya Sandbox, he's the CEO of the Sandbox. He's a young 28-year-old from NIT Trichy, and it's amazing. Manish Jaiswal, he's from Gorakhpur in UP. He has no connection with Telangana, but he's been doing fantastic work. And there is this young couple called Shravya Nalla. She's a Bit Salem, and Ajit Nara, her husband, IIT Bombay. They lived in the US. They're in the mid-30s. So she said growing up in Nizamabad, there were not enough good schools. So they went back to Nizamabad, and they built a school that was ranked the #1 by Better India in all of South India a few years ago. So I can go on. There are several people. Every district has people like that. Oftentimes they're kind of lonely out there trying to fight these lonely battles. So question is, any organization, whether it's ILP or Sandbox, or what can we do to identify, nurture these kind of people? I think that's a big part of it. And frankly, 70% of India still lives in these small towns and villages. They don't have to be just, people where you help them get jobs and all of that. Some of them can and will become the job creators of tomorrow, right? A lot of amazing talent out there. And so I think if you can sort of think about how you build a longer-term sort of institution that can attract, nurture great talent, but also help some of the local people themselves become the job creators. Because I'm a huge believer in the power of relatable role models. I think Amit talked about it early on, right? When I chose to become an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley, I saw people like Kanwal Rekhi or Suhas Patil. I said, hey, this Punjabi guy can do it, why not me, right? And or a Marathi guy, or and frankly, the same thing is happening now in the districts also with the non-profit work. When one of these young kids that comes from the villages, I'm talking about, these are like, daughter of a BD worker or a day laborer, when she goes through one of our programs, we have a program on skilling with a focus on employability. When she gets a job, it's amazing what a difference it makes to the other people of the same age in the village. They start believing it's possible for them. They can relate to me, or Fanindra Sama, my partner in this, he's also from Nizamabad. They built a wonderful company called Red Bus, but I mean, they can relate to him much better than they can relate to me because he's closer to their generation. But when you see one of these, kids go through this sort of a thing and get a job, it's amazing. And same thing with the farmers. When there's a progressive farmer in a village that does something interesting and, gets much higher yield, then the others start believing, hey, maybe this is the right way. If it happens to somebody like, 50 miles away, it's still not the same. So I think a big part of it is how do you create more relatable role models at the micro level, and how do you build an institution that can nurture talent and they go on to become the job creators. So it doesn't have to depend on, any of us in some ways, right? And they can teach us a lot too, by the way. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love the healthy competition part, of course, with Punjabis, so that I completely relate to that.
By the way, Kanwal is my mentor, my board member. I love the man for everything that he taught me. So
Yes.
I meant that with utmost respect to all Punjabis in the room.
Yes. Nalini, I'm going to shift gears on one of the barriers, which we keep hearing again and again, of trust. Obviously, what has worked here is the top 10 NGOs who get funded in US. We all know who they are. There is very high trust factor. In fact, I would say they are, supported, championed by many people from this group. But how does that same trust factor go to the next 100 nonprofits? How does it go to the next 200 nonprofits? Otherwise, we will be stuck in the cycle of the big get bigger and bigger, and everyone else starves. So as someone who's run a nonprofit, which is maybe not in that size quantum, talk a little bit about the barrier first and what can be done about it.
Sure, thank you. So, Arogya World is the name of the nonprofit I founded. We do diabetes prevention through healthy living in India. I believe, punch above our weight. We have reached 12.5 million people across India with all our programs. We teach healthy living to school children in schools, to workplaces. We take it through social media as well as mobile technology. And we've even mobilized a whole city of Bangalore to try to become an Arogya city and India's first Arogya city. So we believe very much in community-based prevention, and we are doing that, we think, in thinking really in terms of scale and large numbers. Couple points. When we approach donors here, first of all, we have to move, Indian Americans, we have to move them to the cause and not to social climbing. Unfortunately, many in our community will give because they just become better viewed in their communities. And people have told me this. Hey, yours is in India, doesn't do anything for me. I want to give here because I can give to the museum or the symphony or the science center, and I can get a lot more social capital out of it. So we have to move people to think about the cause. When you look at, with serious wealth comes serious responsibility. And this is our time, right? Indian Americans now are wealthy, seriously wealthy, and more than giving to their families in India, more than giving to religious causes and universities, I think there is a real outlet to give to these social causes, and we have to own that responsibility and give it. But with health, with something like diabetes prevention, we face an even bigger hurdle, right? This isn't something you can wrap your arms around quickly. We're talking about 30 years. Some people get diabetes age 30. We're talking to 11-year-old children. How do you know that what you do to an 11-year-old child is going to impact their health? Have you done a study? Show me proof. So that is actually a real hurdle for us. The threshold in health is very high. Show me proof is the thing that donors ask us. And it's a little, to some extent, unfair, I think, when it is science-based. There is proof already in clinical trials and landmark studies that diabetes is preventable through healthy living. 80% of diabetes can be prevented with 3 lifestyle changes. You have to eat right, exercise, and avoid tobacco. Lots of academic centers have actually proven that. We are taking that truth and translating it to the real world in grassroots settings in India. As I said, we work all over India, 19 states, sometimes with partners, sometimes by ourselves. So we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. We shouldn't have to show the proof again through diabetes prevention, through A1C measurements, through clinical trials. That's what's been done. We are just looking for and scoring for behavior change. So I think it's really difficult sometimes to convince donors that we have a good model. And right now we're thinking really actively about scale. So we've reached 12.5 million people. We now want to go beyond this to reach 50 million people in the next few years and so on. So I'm part of the Ashoka group, and they have been advising us and giving us real strategy feedback that, hey, you can build something called a change-making network, motivate mothers and women to steer their families to healthy living through nudges, through recognition, with the tech platform, even beyond your intervention. So you finish the school program, and then what do you do? You finish the text message program, and then what do you do? Leverage all this motivation to do further. So this change-making network is still a concept. So my own programs, but I'm looking for funding for that extension now of our work. And I think it has the elements of being truly transformative for India. If we can crack this in India, we have been told the funding will come, and I actually firmly believe that. But at the moment, we need seed funding in a concept, in something that is probably requires a little bit of a leap of faith. So health, it's very, very, very difficult. So that's an extra barrier, for groups like us.
Thank you, Nalini. I'm going to, I'm going to open it up for a few questions from the audience, and then maybe close. Does anyone have any questions for this group? Please go ahead. Do you have a mic?
Should I just speak without a mic?
Maybe, yeah, maybe take it.
Thank you to all the panelists for amazing insights. I'm also part of the Ashoka extended family, and great to hear the perspectives, and thanks for challenging the philanthropic kind of mindset. My question is for fellow Stanford and Anand.
I'm sorry, can everyone hear from the back? Just give us a second. The question is, let's try again.
Is it working? Okay, working now. So just wanted to acknowledge the amazing insights, and part of the extended Ashoka family as well. Wonderful to meet a fellow family member. My question is for my fellow Stanford alum, Anand. Anand, you have been amazing in your philanthropy. Not just a brilliant tech innovator, venture capitalist, but also just giving not just to India or alma mater on so many fronts. I don't see this happening so much from the venture capital community, the Indian venture capital community, which is among the most affluent in the diaspora here. What is it that you being in circles in that world as well, what happened to you, and any insights on what will it take to get the mainstream Indian venture capital community, get that 200 million number up? And the second question is the points raised about data and such, that our tech minds always demand data. And it's from having talked to many Ashoka fellow friends, I know that's hard for an organization to produce. Is there a role an organization like GIVE can play here to help get some of that data and building that trust for the data-driven venture capitalists and others? But the first question particularly, what will it take to shift that mindset in the Indian diaspora venture capital community to give more?
Thanks, Radhika. So, I think there are a lot of Indian, charitable, donations from VCs in the Indian community. There is a lot of giving that's happening. So it's not true to say that I'm some kind of outlier. I think there is a lot of giving that is happening. I think the big change that I think is probably going to unlock more of this is that I think a lot of the people who got into the venture capital from the Indian community were early in their career until a few years ago. Now, many of them become senior now. Right? They become the managing director, managing partners, and now they have the younger generation that comes in. And now, once they become senior and they get to that point in their career where they start thinking about giving, I'm seeing that happening. already. I think it's a natural sort of change that happens in people, right? So and so I think that's I think naturally going to happen. In terms of how Give can help, I think it may be interesting to appeal to the venture capital model and the mindset of the VC community and also the entrepreneurial community. I don't think the VC community and the entrepreneurial community are that different in the way we think in terms of risk capital, in terms of data-driven quantifiable outcomes, in terms of having a business plan that shows you the path to sustainability over a given period of time, and sort of if projects can be pitched in a manner, or in this kind of manner, in which typical startup pitches itself to an investor, I think that would be a good thing, and perhaps Give can coach how nonprofits on how to create pitches like this. Take a project and pitch it as if you were pitching a company, right? So there should be a defined timeline in which there is a defined exit and so on, right? So I think, and the scale, quantifiable impact and all these things. So I think that's part of what Give can do. The other is help, as I said, VCs, especially in Silicon Valley and entrepreneurs, the network is super important. And it's not, by network, I don't mean that, I don't mean galas, because galas are big events where there are lots of people, right? So what I mean is much smaller things like word of mouth and introductions and maybe small dinners at people's homes, things of this nature. I think are much more effective than big galas in terms of fundraising, in my opinion, right? So, and I think the Silicon Valley community is very good at doing those things, and I think Give can potentially enable those things to happen. I do these routinely for nonprofits that I'm involved with. We have small dinners where we invite maybe 10 or 20 people, but we know that these are people who have a high propensity for giving and potential affinity to this area, and maybe out of each dinner, if they get one or two donors, I think that's a win, right? So I think that's the way to think about it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. There are two hands up, so maybe you could go first and then the person behind. Thank you.
Alex Counts from the India Philanthropy Alliance. In moving the needle from 0.12% to 2%, for each of you, what's working right now? What gives you hope that we're going to get there, or even to the 1%? That's my question.
Raju, do you want to take a couple of questions? Yeah, let's take maybe a few questions. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Akanksha Kuchar. I'm from Women's World Banking. We're based out of New York, but are doing tremendous work in India. We've reached about 20 million women, low-income women in India, and we work for economic empowerment for rural women in the region. My question to amazing people sitting in this panel, and it's been very interesting to hear you all, would be I love the idea of finding it difficult to get trust from philanthropists and funders here, and would be interested to know that what can organizations that are technically based in the United States but are working tremendously in the Indian market for rural and low-income people in India can do to gain your trust? Because I feel like we are talking a lot about nonprofits based out of India and forgetting that there are amazing nonprofits based in the United States and find the hurdle to create nonprofits and chapters in India. So would love to know what we can do to gain your trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think there's one there.
Yeah, just shoot. Yeah, go on. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
My personal experience somewhere sort of what you guys are doing in India. I see that
Thank you. Was there a question here? Anshu, go on.
Anshu Gupta from Gunj. So, I mean, a little bit blunt statement and question, that is trust a real issue or is more of an excuse? Right? Because I believe this is making things more complicated. And I mean, in today's era, how do you really trust PowerPoint and Excel sheet? All three stories which we hear today, all of you, you are trusting these things because you are in the field. So it's just a little bit of extra effort from all of us to be in the field and then break those norms instead of just depending on those, endless reports and PPTs. And like we at Gunj, we work with almost 700 partners and we channelize crores and crores worth of material across the country, like any other funding agency which does money. But I mean, our experience has been that you be there, spend some time, you sense it, and then have very open heart also, because I cannot be the only honest person on this earth. I mean, that's what I have to go through.
Can I thank you for the questions? There's one more and then we'll start. Yeah. I'll direct that to Atul soon. I'm going to first request Raju to start with what is the role of the government? How has been the interaction? If you can start there, and then Nalini, speak a little bit about that. And then really the question of what's working in the move from 0.2 to 2%. I'd love Anand you to weigh in, but maybe Raju, you start us off on the role of the government.
Sure, yeah. So again, for the work that we do, because that's mostly in the district, rural areas, one of the things that I kind of discovered over time is, frankly, the relationship with the district collectors, the district education officers. They're far more important than whether, what the chief minister thinks or some other minister or whatever, right? And Telangana, fortunately, we have also had a very sort of progressive government. KTR, who is pretty well known, he's come to the Bay Area a few times. And, in general, we try to keep away from any of the politicians. We've not had any interaction. It's perfectly fine when good things happen. If they want to, take credit or talk about it, that's wonderful for us, But by and large, I think it's fantastic. One of the big things that happened in Telangana state is initially, when the new state was formed, there were about 10 districts. Today, there are about 31 districts. And I think it's been phenomenal. There's been a big change. Now there are 31 collectors, because if you think about it, somebody said the three busiest people in the country in administration are the PM, CM, and the DM. A district magistrate is the collector, right? So by doing that, I think they're able to service their sort of community much better. At least for us, that's been very good. But again, we have to do the real work out there, and to the extent, we don't depend on them for any funds or anything, and they're happy to talk about it when good things happen. So that really hasn't been an issue, at least in Telangana. There are times, of course, there's a collector that loves the idea of what we are doing, and once in a while, they said, okay, we'll support these programs. And they did a little bit, but the next collector comes and it doesn't continue, right? The financial support, and that's okay. We have to kind of take that in stride, and yeah. But by and large, it's been quite positive for the place where we work.
Thank you.
So in our case, we were afraid of working with the government because we didn't know how to navigate that. But then we work with partners who know how to navigate. Now we feel very confident that we can do it. Our schools program, for example, we have implementing it now district-wide in Banda district in UP state. And our partner is helping us navigate and getting all the permissions and all the letters. Like you said, the government is very happy when it's at no cost to them. And we are helping to make more impact. So that's one. In West Bengal, our schools program is being done in 6 districts throughout the district. So this is called district-wide. Every school child in 6th and 7th grade is getting the Arogya program, and we're doing that also with a partner. And we're in conversations with Karnataka government to scale up our text message program to 5 million beneficiaries, leveraging the government's tech backbone, getting one little checkbox added for consent, and then finding maybe a private sector like, waiver from Meta to send the messages itself. So it's truly innovative and trying to bring cost down, because scaling is not just expansion. Scaling is expansion plus cost, bringing the cost per beneficiary down. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So we are working with government. And the only thing is, I also agree with Raju, we don't take money from the government. We would like very much to partner with them and get them to do things to help us, but we have to raise the funds separately from that. Alex, what gives me hope that we can reach some of these numbers, more than the philanthropy part or the giving part, is the impact part. Can we make the impact in a cost-effective way? And the short answer to that is I'm very hopeful about that. Why? Because there are groups that are introducing, like I just came back yesterday from Washington, D.C., where there's a Center for Strategic and Innovative Studies that is introducing US-based NGOs to state governments in India, actively, introducing. I had a 40-minute discussion with 3 ministers of health that they put us in touch with. So these things are happening. There are efforts that are working to increase those connections so that the efforts can happen at scale in India. The other thing that gives me hope is these large nonprofits. So government, yes, but large nonprofits. Anshu is here, Gunj. We can truly reach lots and lots of people on the ground in India if we partner. Project Echo, Sanjeev is here. We can truly reach a lot of people if we can work with Sanjeev's organization, and they are truly helping us. Dr. Sandeep Bhalla is truly helping us broker conversations with national, with the national level and in Karnataka with the health ministry, so that we can actually get those permissions going. We don't know them, but if we go with Dr. Sandeep Bhalla from Project Echo, NHSRC will listen to us. So those things are happening. 700,000 ASHA workers they have access to. If we can train those ASHA workers on non-communicable disease prevention, we can definitely reach those impact numbers, even if the funding doesn't quite reach the 2% level.
Yeah, just one thing I should have pointed out. One thing very important about government does have a huge role. In fact, ideally, back to kind of the startup philosophy, if you will. Think of government like the ultimate acquirer, right? If they like one of your ideas, because they're the best organization to scale, ideally, right? So that has happened in a few cases where some of the programs that we had, the government decided to sort of roll it out across the state. So I just don't want to sort of suggest that somehow they're not important. They're absolutely important, but for the work, at least the kind of work that we do at the district level, the collectors, district education officers, they're a lot more important than somebody who's running the state. Yeah.
Great. Anand, what gives you hope about the march from 0.2 to 2%, like Alex said?
Look, I think all the trend lines are in place, I think, which came through from the presentation. And I think, to go back to that gentleman, Ashu's question of Gunj, I think people by nature, especially in Silicon Valley, our default mode is trust. We invest in entrepreneurs and business plans on a PowerPoint, right? So our default mode is trust, right? So it's trust but verify, right? So it's, I think it's more about having these credible plans that can deliver big impact with small amounts of seed capital, right, coming to us. I think so the default, and I think the more we see of those, I think it's just going to naturally happen.
Great. I know we have definitely run over time, but I think just summarizing, it seems like there is energy. It seems like there is, like Anand, you said, things are in place. There were few things we heard. One thing we heard really is, I think Anshu put it brilliantly, like just go there. The reality about trust is like, how do you build trust without the relationship? Also, how do you build trust without understanding? So travel, A. Secondly, I think we heard a lot about how do we do a cause orientation. It doesn't matter which cause it is. It can be a lifetime's journey, but choose the cause. And the third one, of course, we heard about the power of networks. I think the Valley is like, a best example of where that's already happening. How can the power of the networks, which has already happened in the startup world, actually enable the social impact world? But with that, thank you so much to my panelists. Thank you, audience.